Hi students, and welcome to another video lecture in Introduction to Environmental Science. In this lecture we will be covering Chapter 6, Section 2, which is about grasslands. The learning objectives for this lecture include understanding where the world's most extensive grasslands are located, understand how human activities impact grasslands, and being able to list 3 approaches that pastoralists can use to minimize impacts caused by domesticated grazing animals. After forests, grasslands are among the biomes most heavily used by humans. Prairies, savannas, steppes, open woodlands, and other grasslands occupy about 1/4 of the world's land surface. Much of the United States Great Plains and the Prairie provinces of Canada fall in this category. The 3.8 billion hectares of pastures and grazing lands in this biome make up about twice the area of all agricultural crops. When you add this to about 4 billion hectares of other lands, forest, desert, tundra, marsh, and thorn scrub, used for raising livestock, more than half of all land is used at least occasionally for grazing. At least 3 billion cattle, sheep, goats, camels, buffalo, and other domestic animals on these lands make a valuable contribution to human nutrition. Sustainable pastoralism can increase productivity while maintaining biodiversity in a grassland ecosystem. Although grasslands may appear to be uniform and monotonous to the untrained eye, native prairies can be highly productive and species-rich. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, more threatened plant species occur in rangelands than in any other major American biome. This slide shows the distribution of the world's grasslands. Grasslands are subdivided into 2 distinct subbiomes. One subbiome is the temperate grasslands, like we find in the United States and across the Asian continent. The second is tropical grasslands, found in South America, Africa, and in parts of Australia. There are some significant differences between the 2 grasslands. Tropical grasslands are located in the tropical latitude, in the interior of the continents in the trade wind belt. The grass is tall, 3 meters, coarse and spiky, and is neither juicy nor nutritive. There are scattered deciduous trees. Tropical grasslands are often known as the big game country, as there is a variety of herbivores and carnivores. People practice nomadic herding, as the soil is not very fertile. Tropical grasslands are known as savannas in Africa and Australia, and llanos and campos in South America. Temperate grasslands are located in the temperate latitude, in the interior of the continents. The grass is short, soft, juicy, and high in nutritional value. These temperate grasslands are treeless as rainfall is low. The prairies are known as the breadbaskets of the world, and commercial farming and commercial herding is extensive in these regions. The soil is fertile. Temperate grasslands are known as prairies in North America, steppes in Asia, pampas in Argentina, and downs in Australia. This slide shows the short grass prairies of the American Midwest. As noted in the previous slide, temperate grasslands are treeless because of lack of rain. By carefully monitoring the numbers of animals and condition of the range, ranchers and pastoralists, people who live by herding animals, can adjust to variations in rainfall, seasonal plant conditions, and nutritional quality of forage to keep livestock healthy and avoid overusing of any particular area. Conscientious management can actually improve the quality of the range. When land is abused by overgrazing, especially in arid areas, rain runs off quickly before it can soak into the soil to nourish plants or replenish groundwater. Springs and wells dry up. Seeds can't germinate in the dry, overheated soil. The barren ground reflects more of the sun's heat, changing wind patterns, driving away moisture-laden clouds, and leading to further desiccation. This process of conversion of once fertile land to desert is called desertification. This process is ancient, but in recent years it has been accelerated by expanding populations and the political conditions that force people to overuse fragile lands. In this figure, we see how soil degradation, owing to overgrazing, threatens rangelands throughout the world. The percentage of rangeland soil degradation due to overgrazing is shown by the red bars. The blue bars show soil degradation from other causes. Notice that in Europe, Asia, and the Americas, farming, logging, mining, urbanization, and other causes are responsible for most of the soil degradation, whereas in Africa and Oceania, where more grazing occurs and desert or semi-arid scrub make up much of the range, grazing damage is higher. As is the case in many countries, most public grazing lands in the United States are not in good health. Political and economic pressures encourage managers to increase grazing allotments beyond the carrying capacity of the range. Lack of enforcement of existing regulations and limited funds for range improvement have resulted in overgrazing, damage to vegetation and soil, including loss of native forage species and erosion. The National Resources Defense Council claims that only 30% of public rangelands are in fair condition and 55% are poor or very poor. Like federal timber management policy, grazing fees charged for use of public lands often are far below market value and represent an enormous hidden subsidy to Western ranchers. Holders of grazing permits generally pay the government less than 25% of what it would cost to lease comparable private land. The 31,000 permits on federal range bring in only $11 million in grazing fees, but cost $47 million per year for administration and maintenance. The $36 million difference amounts to a massive cow welfare system of which few people are aware. More than half of all publicly owned grazing land in the United States is in poor or very poor condition. Overgrazing and invasive weeds are the biggest problems. In some places, farmers and ranchers find that short-term intensive grazing helps maintain forage quality. As South African range specialist Alan Savory observed, wild ungulates, hoofed animals, such as gnus or zebras in Africa or bison in America, often tend to form dense herds that graze briefly but intensively in a particular location before moving on to the next area. Rest alone doesn't necessarily improve pastures and rangelands. Short-duration, rotational grazing, confining animals to a small area for a short time, often only a day or two, before shifting them to a new location, simulates the effect of wild herds. Forcing livestock to eat everything equally, to trample the ground thoroughly, and to fertilize heavily with manure before moving on helps keep weeds in check and encourages the growth of more desirable forage species. This approach doesn't work everywhere, however. Many plant communities in the United States desert Southwest, for example, apparently evolved in the absence of large hoofed animals and can't withstand intensive grazing. Restoring fire can be as beneficial to grasslands as it is to forests. In some cases, ranchers are cooperating with environmental groups in range management and preservation of a ranching economy. Here we see an example of rotational grazing. Intensive rotational grazing encloses livestock in a small area for a short time, often only one day, within a movable electric fence to force them to eat vegetation evenly and fertilize the area heavily. Another approach to ranching in some areas is to raise wild species such as impala, wildebeest, oryx, or elk. These animals forage more efficiently, tolerate harsh climates, often are more pest and disease resistant, and fend off predators better than usual domestic livestock. In summary, grasslands are located worldwide, but are especially important in North America, South America, Africa, Asia, and parts of Australia. After forests, grasslands are among the biomes most heavily used by humans. When fertile grasslands are abused by overgrazing, especially in arid areas, soils become desiccated. This process of conversion of once fertile land to desert is called desertification. More than half of all publicly owned grazing land in the United States is in poor or very poor condition. Overgrazing and invasive weeds are the biggest problems. Short duration rotational grazing can be effective in certain ecosystems, but not all. Use of fire and use of wild animal species, which are more efficient foragers, may minimize damage to grasslands from ranching activities.